Hello class, welcome to lesson 4.4, which is all about parallel and perpendicular lines. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to write an equation of the line that passes through a given point that's also parallel to a given line, and you should be able to do the same thing but have it be perpendicular. So just a reminder, parallel lines do not intersect. Parallel lines look something like this, where they will never touch each other. Perpendicular lines are lines that intersect at right angles. So it looks something like this. Okay, so just a reminder, trying to keep those two straight can be a little tricky sometimes. Let's look at our first example. Example 1. Write an equation in point-slope form for a line that passes through 4, -1 and is parallel to the graph of y equals 1/4 x plus 7. Okay, so in order for, actually no, before I say that, let's jump back. Point slope form. Quick review. Remember, is y minus y1 equals the slope times x minus x1. And then something for you to keep in mind, parallel slope is always the same. Your slope stays the same, so that way they never touch. So let's try doing a point slope form quickly. We do y minus, what's our y1? What's the point we want it to go through? It's a -1, so minus a negative becomes plus, equals our slope stays the same for it to be parallel. And then I say x minus, what's my x1 point, is 4. So that would be writing the equation in point slope form, a line that passes through that point and it's parallel. So remember, parallel lines have the same slope. Part B, write an equation in slope-intercept form. Remember, that's y equals mx plus b for the line that passes through 4, -2 and is parallel to the graph of y equals 1/2 x minus 7. So I have y equals m, my m stays the same as what I'm given, so 1/2 x plus b. Now I want it to go through the point 4, 2, so I plug my -2 in for my y. -2 equals 1/2, and then my x value is 4, so I say 4 plus b. So I have -2 equals 1/2 times 4 is 2 plus b. If I subtract 2 from both sides, I have -4 equals b. So that means I can go back up to my equation and I can put a -4, and that is my equation in slope-intercept form. Why don't you go ahead and try the next problem on your own, see how you do. Hopefully you ended up with y equals 1/2 x plus 2. If you have any questions, be sure to either ask myself or a friend. Example 2, on the plans for a treehouse, a beam is represented by segment QR, and it has endpoints of Q is at -6,2 and R is at -1,8. A connecting beam, represented by segment ST, has endpoints -3, 6, and T, -8, 5. Are the beams perpendicular? So I said parallel lines have the same slope. Perpendicular lines, if I had, let's say my original slope was 2/3. So if that is my original, my perpendicular slope would be negative, so opposite, and then the reciprocal. Okay, so see how my fraction flipped and it went from positive to negative? That is what happens in order for a slope to be perpendicular. Had it started as a -2/3, my reciprocal would be a positive 3/2. Okay, so you always flip. If it starts as a negative, it becomes positive. If it starts as positive, it becomes negative. Now let's try to find our slopes so we can compare them and see if these points are, see if these beams are perpendicular. So I need to look at Q and R first. So if I do 8 minus 2, because y2 minus y1, over -1 minus a -6 becomes -1 plus 6. So I have 6 over 5 is my QR slope. And now let's look at ST. I have 5 minus 6 over negative 8 minus a negative 3, which becomes plus 3. So negative 1 over negative 5, or that's just 5. Is that slope, is 5 the opposite reciprocal of 6/5? No, so this is not perpendicular because the slopes are not opposite reciprocals. You would say that. Go ahead and try this one on your own, see how you do. Hopefully you determined that segment JL is not perpendicular to segment KM. If you have questions, be sure to ask. Example 3, determine whether the graphs of 6x minus 2y equals 2, y equals 3x minus 4, and y equals 4 are parallel or perpendicular. So we have 3 different equations here, and the easiest way to compare equations is if they're all in the same form. So notice that we have a y equals and a y equals. So let's change our first equation to be in a y equals form. So we have 6x minus 2y, 2y, not x. 6x minus 2y equals negative 2. Okay, so now in order to get y by itself, I'm going to subtract 6x from both sides. So I have negative 2y equals negative 2 minus 6x. And in order to get y by itself, I have to divide by a negative 2. So I have y equals negative 2 divided by negative 2 becomes a positive 1. And then negative 6 divided by negative 2 becomes positive 3x. So I'm going to rewrite that. Y equals 3x plus 1 is one of my equations. Then I had y equals 3x minus 4. So I know that these two are parallel. And then I have a y equals 4. Does that have the same slope as the 3x? No. Does it have the opposite reciprocal slope, so it's perpendicular? No, it doesn't have any slope at all, so that means that one is not going to be related to these first two. So our first two are parallel. Go ahead and try this one on your own, see how you do. Hopefully you decided that y equals negative 2x plus 1 and x minus 2y equals negative 4 are perpendicular and none of the lines are parallel. An example for our last one, write an equation in slope-intercept form that passes through 4, 7 and is perpendicular to the graph of y equals 2/3 x minus 1. So y equals 2/3 x minus 1. If we want our slope to be perpendicular, this is the symbol for perpendicular, okay? So if you ever see me write that, that means perpendicular. My perpendicular slope, I'm starting with 2/3. I need to do the opposite, so it's positive is what I'm starting with. So I need a negative, and I need the reciprocal, so 3/2 is my perpendicular slope. So I'm going to have a y equals negative 3/2 x plus b, and then I want it to go through 0.47. So I plug that in for x and y. And if I do negative 3/2 times 4, I'm left with negative 6 equals, negative 6 plus b equals 7, or 13 equals b. So my equation back up top here becomes plus 13, and that would be my equation of the perpendicular line in slope-intercept form. Go ahead and try the last example on your own and see how you do. Hopefully you determine the equation needs to be y equals 4x plus 10. If you have any questions about this example or anything in the video, be sure to ask either myself or a friend. We'd be more than happy to help. Have a great day.